Hello, everyone, and welcome to But I Digress, episode 44, I guess. My apologies for the video if that didn't look as good as it could have been or play as well as it should have. I'm still, like I said, learning how StreamYard works, and honestly, I have a 6-year-old laptop that should probably be replaced and be replaced soon. However, I am proud of that silly little video, even if I just threw it together on Windows Movie Maker, as you can tell, which at this point is outdated technology, as Megatron would say from Beast Wars. But anyway, you can also tell I've lost my voice a little bit because of all the excitement the last 4 days. This always happens. This always happens after I spend 4 days at Gen Con and I'm talking things up, and with all of the loud ambiance from the crowds and everything there, I have to talk a little bit louder. I get excited. I'm highly caffeinated. Last few years that I've been going to Gen Con, I basically drink one energy drink a day, and this year I may have had at least one Mountain Dew every day to go along with it. So I probably maxed out my caffeine intake for the whole day. That being said, it's waning a little bit. I've been hearing a lot of people talk about it, Eric. That's just why Eric's not here. By the way, you can tell that I am not coming to you live from a hotel. This is actually in my home, so you're getting, the background for what is currently in, I guess you could call it, my nerd cave. This is where I do a lot of my work. All of the things that that I'm doing and producing and all of that. But anyway, it's been a day, to say the least. Been a week, to say the least. I think I mentioned it in a previous stream. I have not been used to being at cons in a while. This is my first Gen Con in 2 years. Really, it's been my first con in 2 years, and so there were some adjustments that needed to be made, but I also brought up how this year's Gen Con just didn't feel nearly as big, for many reasons. Diet Gen Con that, some of us were calling it. But all of that to say, still some of the same things that happened. Weirdly enough, I'll start by saying this. Well, I was trying to say Eric is not here because he's tired. He didn't want to set up. However, the two of us will be speaking on his Instagram tomorrow, the Nerd Chapel Instagram, talking about the week. So he didn't make it every night this week, but on the YouTube channel. But we will be having a discussion about everything tomorrow night on his Instagram. Anyway. Trying to figure where I was going to see. Now the caffeine's wearing off and I'm coming down. I usually have boundless energy. I keep hearing people talk about how they're exhausted from everything. I'm like, I could do this all day. In fact, I do, because that's what I've been doing the last 4 days. But thankfully, I only live 2 hours away from the convention center in Indianapolis, so it wasn't as hard for me to pack up and leave and get home at a decent hour, especially since I'm teaching tomorrow morning at University of St. Francis, which, if I haven't mentioned that already, that is where I now work. Finished my grad degree, and now I'm working at the University of St. Francis teaching freshman composition classes. And I have 2 of them tomorrow morning that I need to take care of. All of that to say, today was interesting. Really interesting. It started off with the worship service. Well, really, the first thing that it started with was we all got up, we all had breakfast one last time at our hotel, and then we had to check out because obviously we weren't going to come back. However, I did leave my car in the parking garage because I paid for that parking and I wasn't about to move it. That being said, we put some stuff in the car. Then Jared and I walked all the way over there. Eric went earlier because he was helping with the worship service. And then we ran into a bit of a snag when we actually got to the Westin Inn for the worship service because the tickets were electronic, and they had some snags trying to figure out how to scan for the tickets. You had to scan the badges. they thought they had to bring us some new equipment to do it. Turned out they could have done it with the app, but then there was, you had to be set up as the GM for it, and just it was a big to do. We ended up scanning everybody's badges as they were coming in. What was really cool is I got to see Derek, the geek preacher, again for the first time in a while. He didn't preach, but he did lead a little bit of the service. The guy who ended up preaching again this year was Tom Vassell of the Dice Tower. Great staple of the show. Wish I had talked with him a little bit more. I have some things to say to him about the Street Fighter miniatures game, which apparently he's got opinions about, and I've got opinions about. So, I kind of wanted to retort to him. So it was a great way to start the day. I got over to the hall, and I'm going to tell you this right now. This was a surprisingly good Sunday. I typically expect Sunday to be the slowest day. I don't expect to make a lot of sales on a Sunday, even though it does attract a bit of a different crowd. There are a lot of people who only come on Sunday because Sunday is usually billed as family day. It's the least expensive day to pay to come in. I was talking with one of the other vendors, one of the other authors, and they were talking about how it tends to attract a little bit more of the casual crowd. Maybe it might have been Jay, one of my regulars who came back today. I mentioned him. I think I mentioned him before. But he came back and he actually bought the rest of the devotional books. And mind you, it was after Eric left, which is another reason Eric's not here with me right now, because he left sooner, so he doesn't have as much to talk about. So anyway, but Gen Con Sunday on Gen Con attracts a bit of a casual crowd. So basically, you have the 4-day crowd and the Sunday crowd for the most part. Anyway, it was surprisingly good. I was making a lot of sales. In fact, I made a sale within 20 minutes of the doors opening. That never happens. It was crazy. And as usual, the kaiju stuff continued to sell really well. I did start moving more of the Zorzum books, which is what I was expecting. I still didn't sell quite as many as I was expecting, but I still did end up selling a lot. Was probably the title that I sold the most copies of technically, but if you take the two main kaiju titles and put them together, it would give it a run for its money, and people were just flocking there as soon as they saw it, particularly Attack of the Kaiju Volume 2, because it had such a striking cover. At least that's what a lot of people were telling me. They also were gravitating toward the newest 42 book, the Fantastic 42, but some people thought it was a children's book, which was just odd. I mean, I get it's the art style of the covers and everything, but it's not children's fiction book. But all of that to say, surprisingly good, made a lot of money today. I haven't tallied up everything, but I more than made up between my titles and Eric, because Eric was in charge of, I let Eric be in charge of the devotionals this weekend. Between the two of us, I more than made up for the cost of the table. Heck, even without Eric's sales of the devotional book, I more than made up for the cost of the table, which is always my goal when I go to Gen Con. I always expect to have inventory left over, so I'm not as worried about that. I just want to equal the cost of the table, which, even if I'm just equaling the cost of the table, I'm probably still, technically out a little bit of money, and all of that if you really want to get technical, but I'm not going to get technical. Not today anyway. Took a few pictures of some cosplayers. Let me look through and see if I had any good pictures. To be honest, other than going to the church service, I didn't do any events today. But let me see. Oh, this was the balloon sculpture guy came back. I got a picture of that on the way back. He had a blue dragon this year. And then there was this nice one right here. Met a couple of kids who were cosplaying Hawkeye and Edward Elric from Full Metal Alchemist, one of my favorite animes. That was really cool. What was funny is the little boy who's Edward. They were at the table across from me. Then they went all the way around, came to my table last in that row, and I talked to the kid, to the Ed kid, and got him to talk his mom into buying a book from me, which was great. Oh, I ran into a guy who was cosplaying one of the Aquabats. That's obscure if there ever was. That's an obscure reference if there ever was one, let me tell you. I think he was one of the exhibitors too, because I saw him at the exhibitor's restroom a little bit later. Saw an heiress from a very pretty one, I might add, from Final Fantasy VII. That was nice. The Pikachus that are always hanging out by at the counter. See, words. Remember the tagline for But I Digress for all those years when I was doing it, where sometimes my mouth goes faster than my brain. Very true right now. But these are the Pikachus that are always at the counter. They used to be at the checkouts for the artist section. Now they just hang out with the people who are supervising it, I guess. One of them is an old electronic one that you press its paw on, it makes noise, and the cheeks light up. It will actually do it by itself. So the theory is that it's haunted. I saw that happen today. It turned on by itself. It was a little freaky. So in terms of cosplays and all of that, that's what I got today. Talked to a lot of people. I actually did have people who said they would come back, and they did come back, which was very nice, very encouraging. But probably the biggest highlight of the day I had, Eric left around 1 o'clock because he had to leave early. He had a longer trip than I did, and his ride was leaving sooner. I'll get to what happened afterward, but probably the highlight of the whole day for me was I sent not Jared. Okay, yeah, I sent Jared to get me a T-shirt, but that's not the highlight I'm trying to talk about here. The highlight I'm trying to talk about is I had a conversation with Jay. He's always been very encouraging, and one of the previous times that I came a few years ago to Gen Con, I was feeling very discouraged. I wasn't sure if people were appreciating the writing that I was doing. I was just in an unhappy place, working at a job that I hated and all of that sort of stuff, and just trying to make inroads as an artist doing all this, doing my writing and not feeling like it was going anywhere. And he came and a few years ago reminded me that things are happening thanks to my writing that I'm not aware of, and they will continue to do that. And this year, the big thing he was telling me was that he felt like, this was great to hear, that since none of the big Christian nerd ministries, they were there, but they weren't, didn't have tables or anything set up. That's really the place for people to congregate and hang out and talk about these things was at my table, weirdly enough, because I'm the one who sat there and I had the stuff. I had the materials, like what CGG would do or Love Thy Nerd would do if they had tables set up. It was me this time. And I gave people a place there. And to be honest, he was probably right. There was a guy who came by while Eric was still there, and we pitched the devotions to me. Ended up not buying any, but we had a very interesting conversation about how he came up with some really good logic to illustrate to people that even when you say you're not religious, you are religious, especially if you believe in science. It was a fascinating conversation. I would have loved to have sat down and, had a live stream conversation like I'm having with you about this, or recorded a podcast with him, which is his basic argument was that science tells you where you came from and where you're going when you die and all of that sort of stuff. And that's exactly what religion does. So, when we kind of say that science is a religion, it's not quite as much of a joke as you want to think it is. By the way, this was my shirt today. Ran into a Loki cosplayer, a girl who I'm assuming, unless she was using the cosplay as an excuse to be a jerk, she was just being in character. And after I said, "Are you burdened with glorious purpose?" and talked with her a little bit, took a picture and all that fun stuff. She said, "I hate your shirt." I'm guessing it's because these are all superheroes, and Loki's a villain and all that. At least I'm assuming the best on her part, because she didn't seem like a mean person otherwise. But so that was really great to hear. And I had a lot of people who came back, like I said, made some sales. I was making sales basically all day. There was a little bit of some lulls here and there, but overall, it was a very, very prosperous weekend. And Yeah, I was very glad that I went this year, despite the fact that we weren't getting, that it wasn't as big a convention and there wasn't as much there. To be honest, I was finding myself wishing that if I had known, say, uh, that the writer symposium wasn't going to be there, I would have submitted events to do writing seminars, and I think people would have gone, and it would have been really cool if I could have been able to do that. If I just thought of it, but I didn't. I was so preoccupied with other things and being ready to vend and all of that sort of stuff. All of that to say, it was very prosperous despite the limitations. I made a lot more money today. Well, maybe not a lot more, but I made more money this weekend at this at Diet Gen Con than I did in a lot of other Gen Cons when it was at full strength, or at least what would have then been full strength. It's just funny how that works. And I was telling Jay, I hope if you're watching this, Jay, thank you. I was telling him, well, if you watch this later, I should say, I was telling him that one of the things that I've learned to do is lean into what I know I'm good at. And I know this can come across as, I don't know, braggadocious. That's the kind of weird words that are coming to my mind right now. But, I'm naturally charismatic, and the more I keep leaning into it, especially at a place like Gen Con, the more it seems to work. And I was able to connect with people and sell them on the stuff. And, I could, read the room a little bit. And if they were just looking at the back cover copy and, I didn't need to interrupt them and tell them everything they were reading the book. I didn't have to make them do anything, I didn't have to tell them anything. They were reading it for themselves. So, I don't know. Like I said, little stream of consciousness right now. But my point being, I think that's one of the reasons that I did as well this year as I did. Now, it did help that I had Eric there, tag teaming with me. To a certain extent, Jared, who would watch the table while I was gone to, take a bathroom break and things like that. It's just the whole thing, the whole weekend. I was just very glad to be there. I'm already starting to miss it, but I always miss it. And I was also glad that even though I was definitely doing Gen Con on a budget this year, I was able to reconnect with, some friends I hadn't seen in a while, and I was able to actually play some games. There have been Gen Cons where I did events that weren't gaming, and it just, it did feel a little bit lame when I did that. I go to a gaming convention, not play any games, and so I got to do stuff like that, and it was such tremendous fun. I can't wait to go back next year. I'm really curious to see what next year is going to be like, if it will be full strength, it will be back to normal, and will I be able to sell even more books? I might want to hightail it to make sure I got at least one more new title to bring with me next year. Especially now that things like the banner, I finally got Rocco's banner finally came in while I was there. And, I got some more books that I was going to add to my inventory, but it didn't show up in time. It's just, things didn't go exactly according to plan, but what can you do? What can you do? Best laid plans of mice and men. Well, that being said, thank you everyone who came to see me out in Gen Con. And I can't wait to see all of you all again. Now, just to give you a little bit of an update, since I've kind of used Gen Con as a little bit of an excuse to revive this old YouTube show. Did 4 episodes in a row. Because honestly, the more I thought about it, the more it seemed like, but I digress. It was kind of built for this live format, and I think it's better that way anyway. I was trying to make my videos so hyper produced back then, and trying to be this full-fledged YouTuber with sketches and characters and all of that. It was a lot of editing, and I had a terrible camera and all that stuff. But what it was originally intended to be is this kind of way of me kind of doing like these little lectures and things like that, talking about stuff that's going on, doing movie reviews. I think I'm actually going to see if I can get that version of the show up and going again and do some sessions like this. And in the future, keep making some episodes, keep it relatively easy to make and all of that sort of stuff, because where most of my energy is going in terms of my non-writing, creative output is the podcast, the Monster Island Film Vault, which I do highly recommend you check out. And, so that's where a lot of it's going to go. I can only do this so much. I might, maybe once a month or something like that, I might crank one of these out if I have something really interesting to say, or if if there's like a big movie that I just saw and I want to put out a little video review or something like that, I might do that. Who knows at this point? But it was interesting to try it again. I don't know how many people care. I suppose we'll find out. But thank you again for listening to me ramble for 20 minutes, no more like 21 according to the timer right here. I think I covered everything that I wanted to cover. I wish I had some people to chat about it with me, but apparently I am the one person who's not completely dead from Gen Con at this point. Instead, he's been invigorated by it and can't wait to go again. All right. Anyway, I got other things I got to do. So many deadlines, so much work. Good Lord. Thank you very much. See you later.